Hello, everyone. Hello once again, and welcome to the Prismata News and Game Dev Insights Show. I am Elliot Grant, your host, who can't control the volume correctly because my mouse has been acting up. Today we are going to have a special treat. I'm going to be playing through some of the campaign missions and giving sort of developer commentary on them, telling you guys the story behind each mission and how we came about, both from the plot side and from the level design side of making the missions the way they are right now. And if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat or in the YouTube comments, and I will try to answer them. But let's get right to it. There is no need to delay. So no, I'm not going to voice act the character lines. Maybe I could find somebody else to help me with that, and we can do that type of playthrough at some point. Let me actually let me kill this theme music, and we'll actually get the in-game music on proper. Okay, so yeah, those little blobs that pop up that give you the description of each mission, they're actually so that if you just stopped playing for a while and came back, you remember what happened. They're sort of they're meant to give you a little tidbit of the plot and a summary, but not kind of advance the plot in any way. We wanted to sort of get people into the game quickly. We were really concerned about making the cutscenes too long because we figured if people started skipping them, then they would just always skip them. And I know there are players out there who just skip everything every time, and that's fine. But we wanted to at least give people a chance to get through some cutscene and get to the gameplay without skipping. So we wanted the minimum possible exposition. So this single screen was our effort to have the tiniest bit of world building and exposition, but keeping it minimalist. So we're in Centauri, this sandy solar power generation place on the planet Beacon, and we meet our first character, Suede. I'm actually going to hide the Twitch chat just so that it won't cover up the dialogue. Let me talk about the character profiles. So, some people ask, is your game a dating sim? Is it a visual novel? And, not really. It has cutscenes that are inspired by the style of those, but it's more based on games like Trauma Center, which had similar types of Japanese VN dialogues, but no choices you could make in them, or no romantic subplots and stuff like that. And we wanted to have character profiles that introduced the characters in a way that felt right within our universe, and so we settled upon this Alliance Data Systems record. And a lot of the times when in visual novels, the common tropes is they'll have likes and dislikes, and they'll have something like blood type, which is often used just because of the sort of Japanese belief that blood types influence your romantic compatibility. It's sort of a superstition, and it's very common. It's sort of like horoscopes or something. But instead of that, we have this terrestrial genomic ancestry, which tells you oh, okay, but they're on the planet Beacon, but maybe they have ancestry from Earth, so this is their Earth ancestry. And rather than their likes and dislikes, we have their most recent search queries. And so it kind of also connotes this idea who has the information about their most recent search queries? Why is that in Alliance Data Systems that's C5 authorized personnel only? So it's kind of giving you a little bit of hint of what the universe is like, while also talking about the characters. And so Suede is, he's curious as to whether straws have one hole or two, but he's also bored at work and maybe looking at some job postings. We can see he's got a military strategy education background. And yeah, no romantic subplot. Well, not the same way visual novels do. Yeah, the straws have one hole or two is something that we can debate for a long time.
Hello, Suede.
Anyway, so here's Giselle, the robot office lady. We can see some information about her. Nothing too exciting there. And Suede, we could see he's sort of very sarcastic, and he's just like, screw this job. I haven't done anything in 1,000 days. I'm just going to the bar. And here's Logan, who's the data scientist at the office. He has a PhD in information systems and security. And cilantro apparently doesn't taste very good to him. And we actually used to have this long joke about how, like, my contract allows remote work and the bar is specifically included, and I could work for the bar, and Logan saying no, it's not about that. But we shortened a lot of the expository dialogue, especially in the first cutscene, because we wanted to cut to the chase right away. So it's basically, there's a situation. Twitch chat is arguing about how many holes a straw has. I told him last time we aren't responsible for parking disputes. Yeah, so it's kind of like talking more about how menial Suede's job is, that he just gets called out to, like, settle a parking dispute, and he's not even responsible for it. And Logan says, nope, there's actually something going on there. That can't be right. It's probably another jumper. You have to check it out. Alright, at least it's on the way to the bar. This line... We got so many laughs when we added this line in playtesting, so we just decided we had to keep it. Like, I feel like it's a stupid line, but everybody laughed at it. So... yeah. And here we are at the Centauri Robotics manufacturing facility. This background art is one of the first pieces of concept work or illustrations that we ever got done. And it's kind of like this really cool looking futuristic factory with junk lying around, and, So we're at the factory. Where's the casualty? Did they already scrape him off the pavement? So Suede is clearly a little bit indignant regarding his job. And there's Logan with that hologram warp-in effect. Which is actually something we added very late. We wanted a way for people who were not physically at the location to be able to have conversations with people who are at the location. And for a while we thought they would, like, be on a screen or like a little window or something like that, and then we decided, nah, screw it, they have holograms. He's just gonna stand there and be kind of blue and transparent. And I remember just sitting there and I made like a little prototype. I took the characters and I made them blue and slightly transparent, and I just tweaked the color filter a little bit. And we were like, yeah, that looks pretty good. That could just work. And then so we added this kind of fuzzy, blurred background behind them and made it like flicker and pulse a little bit. And that animation when they come in, which I think Alexei and David both helped with. And we ended up with these holograms, and we're actually really happy with them, and they were much easier to create than like adding some kind of screen with people's faces on it or something. It's just like, meh, holograms. That's it. Wasn't it broken for a few days? The reason it was broken for a few days was we actually changed one of the render modes in the game, and we did not realize that it was actually causing, because the hologram uses two nested filters. There's a color filter and a blur filter, and apparently nested filters weren't supported in one of the render modes we were using, so we just like reordered the hierarchy of which render modes it prefers, and we had to change it back because we realized some people were not seeing the holograms anymore, and we didn't catch it in our QA. Anyway, so we learned that robots went crazy. Okay, they've tried everything. You need to terminate the bots. Most action I've had on the job in months. And then we get to the Prismata slate. So this is like something that we've been waiting to unveil for years, which is like, what is the gameplay of Prismata actually in the real world? And the answer is like, the battlefield is actually on your computer screen, and you are the swarm wielder. You are inputting the commands that Suede is inputting to control his fleet of robots. And that's sort of how the game interface works. And once we had that sort of hand holding the screen, it just like clicked for us, and it clicked for all our playtesters that like, okay, finally now it makes sense what the game is actually about. But that was something we'd had in mind since a very, very long time ago. And none of us can actually remember who came up with the original idea that it was sort of like on a person's tablet. I think many of us sort of came up with it simultaneously. I'm going to close Arcanishu. He's going to start streaming when I'm done here. Anyways, so I could go into very minute details about every little thing we did in these missions. The one thing I will say is, like, you see all these arrows that appear and stuff like that? It's all because, like, people didn't know what to do. people didn't understand that like the opponent's units were on top and theirs were on the bottom. They didn't understand that they were supposed to click stuff, and a lot of the way that the first mission behaves, like there's sort of error messages that you don't normally see in regular Prismata. You can't undo, you can't like unclick the Steel Splitter. It instead tells you, oh, it's already been activated. And if you sit here for long enough, it will just always tell you what to do. And that was because like we did have trouble with people just like getting confused and getting stuck in these tutorials, and everything down to like the time it took for that arrow to appear, the time it took before this green pulsating effect starts to happen, was kind of fine-tuned based on testing with new people. And we just had to find more and more new people who had never played before in order to like give them that testing. But anyways, and then we get to the cutscene. And so the idea here is that like just clicking stuff and killing the enemies is pretty boring, so we want to break up the monotony with a lot of like small, short cutscenes that advance the plot a little bit. And so we get this joke here, ouch, looks like somebody at Centauri Robotics is getting fired, which tells you a little bit, again, more about Suede's personality, but also about the seriousness of what's going on. You know, did they screw up their software update? We're not sure yet. I booted up a second assembler. Nice, that should speed things up. So now you have 2 assemblers. And now we teach the swipe mechanic. And this is sort of the control method that like brings joy to people playing Prismata. Once they realize they could swipe, they're like, oh yeah, this is sweet. So it's like, I don't have to click every unit, I just click and drag. And it teaches you also to swipe when you're breaching the opponent's forces. Even though you can just click a scrapper, this really helps people. You know, so they learn this. And Phase 2 is rigged so that you have the perfect amount of damage to kill everything. So it doesn't matter whether you kill a scrapper here or just kill all litter bugs. You always have exactly the right amount of damage to deal with all of these enemies. And if you go back to individually clicking every Steel Splitter in your pile, it'll actually tell you again about swiping, because we had many testers who would do that. So you learn everything built in the last 48 hours has been corrupted. Scrap them all, it's the only option. Want me to send over the Odin? It's still assembled in the hangar. The Odin, that level of firepower is total overkill for this job. Send it over. So now you get this idea that Suede has this sort of underhanded aggression or repressed aggression that he's happy to get out. Like, yes, I want to fire the Odin at some robots. And Giselle tells you how the Odin works, sacrifices a Steel Splitter to deal 4 damage, and again, it, you know, it tells you what to do next at all times. Swipe is nowhere as sweet as undo. Undo is, well, we'll get to that later. The problem with undo is manyfold, but most people just don't understand undo when they do it. And also, especially people coming from a background of a game like Hearthstone that has no undo, they don't actually expect it to be there. So if they click a unit a second time and it undoes what they did before, it actually really confuses the hell out of them. Anyways, so now we get to the climax of the mission, which is you have to kill the factory. You need to shut it down by force, tell them it won't be a problem. So now the factory is putting out bots. You get mission objectives, which are currently obscured by my head, but you can see them right there. And the thing you're meant to learn in this section is that, like, you actually can't kill the factory. You can't partially damage it. You need 20 attack to kill the factory. That's sort of the lesson we want people to learn here. So you go, okay, and maybe you click the Odin. And the timing of the mission is set up so that you generally get to 20 damage around when most of the bots have been killed, and then you can switch over to kill the factory. We have had many players who just kill the bots and then kill the last scrapper over and over and over again, and they don't even get to kill the factory until they're up to 24 damage per turn. You know, but we figured whatever. People can just deal with it. This game has the potential to retire you from Hearthstone. I mean, you don't have to stop playing Hearthstone, but I do think we have something unique to offer here. Anyways, so that's mission 1, and like a lot of current players tell us that they think it's kind of boring or off to a slow start, feels too much like a tutorial, but for new players, they really need time to get used to the game's mechanics. If we throw stuff at them too quickly, then they get really confused and overwhelmed. And we want all the pieces to be in place by the time they get to that mission 4, where they finally have the freedom to buy whatever they want. And we want to make sure they really understand everything before that, so that they can, like, you know, experience freedom in the way that is most meaningful. Anyway, so Suede really trashed the place. That was pretty civil compared to fighting in the war. So we get this remark at the end, which is sort of like, you know, back in the war, the Slate's interface was primitive, and you had to individually control every unit in the swarm. So this comment, like, people think this is just sort of boring blabbering, but it's meant to underscore the point about this game's control input is kind of weird. It's sort of like RTS, where you're just like, you're not controlling every unit. You are simulating that by just giving commands to everything, and then they control themselves. And we really want people to sort of get what the game is about, and we try and incorporate little bits and pieces of it into the dialogue. And Suede's kind of like a bit dismayed that, oh, you just point and click, you know. But yeah, and we need to have a talk, so you know where to meet him. Just grabbing a sip of water. Let's go to the expert challenge before we go to mission 2. We're doing missions 1 and 2 today, and I'm going to also discuss both expert challenges. The new user experience was bad a long time ago. Yeah, it sure was. So one thing about these expert challenges is they're actually hard. We didn't necessarily try to make the hardest possible version of every mission, but we did want each expert challenge to be like a substantial challenge for people, not something that they can do in 2 minutes, or at least in most cases. I'm just going to hide my head for a second so that you can see the objectives. We give this tip that says the expert challenges are not ordered by increasing difficulty. The first 2 expert challenges in episode 1 are actually 2 of the most difficult ones. And this is something that we found in testing. Many people found, like, the first 2 are the ones where you attack, and then the later ones, there's ones where you defend, there's one where you just fight Giselle, and there's some that are like full Prismata games. The attack-based ones gave a lot of people trouble because they're not used to this type of thinking of, like, how do I choose how much attack to build, or when to attack, or whatever. And being good at Prismata doesn't necessarily help you win this mission, because this mission is more like a puzzle to solve than sort of a strategic think through the way Prismata set reading challenge is. Anyways, so how does this mission work? Well, basically, you want to kill stuff fast. And in particular, like, it's not just about doing as much damage as possible, because if you click the Odin now, like, yes, you do more damage in the short term, but by sacrificing a Steel Splitter, you're losing damage through all the subsequent turns, right? So from, it's currently turn 2, you need to finish by turn 8. So that Steel Splitter is missing its opportunity to attack on turns 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is 6 more turns for 4 temporary damage. So you're actually losing damage by clicking Odin right now. And the enemy isn't, like, generating more value, so you're in no rush to take out these bots. You kind of just want to take them out at the last possible minute. So sort of the earliest that Odin is a good thing to click would be 4 turns before the end. But in fact, you'll discover that you want to click Odin even later than that, because getting up to 20 damage is actually the crucial thing. So you have a decision here about whether you want to take 9 as a 7-1-1 or as a 4-4-1. You need to take the 4-4-1, and we'll see why in a bit. And now we're up to 11, 7, and 4. And notice that if we just continue pumping 2 Steel Splitters a turn, we're going to be at 13, 15, 17, 19, and then 21. And we're going to want to take out this bot factory as soon as we can. But 21 is actually too late. If we had sacrificed a Steel Splitter sometime before then we would be at 20, which is the exact perfect amount. So we'll be watching that. But here we're going to do this. Which is the only way we can avoid wasting any damage. Like, the damage in this mission is really, really tight. You have to not waste any. So on this turn, we're at 15. So if we click Odin, we'll be at 19, and the next turn we'll be at 20. So there's absolutely no reason not to click Odin now, because we're just going to be wasting damage if we had 21 this turn. So we do that, and then the last 2 turns we're doing full damage to all of the other units. And the way this mission is set up is such that you're A, never wasting a single point of damage. B, you're clicking Odin at the soonest possible turn such that the factory is still dead the earliest you could kill it. And those two facts combined imply that this solution is actually unique. And the only choice we had was whether or not we could, when we dealt 9 damage, we could take out the 2 1s and the 7, or the 2 4s and the 1. And you have to do it this way so that later when you're doing 9 damage, sorry, not 9 damage, what is it? 13 damage, that you can go 4 4 4 1. And the solution to this expert challenge is in fact unique. And we actually were concerned that that expert challenge might be too difficult for some people, and we saw many of our testers struggle with it. But we wanted to leave it in because we actually thought it was one of the nicest puzzles we had found in building this whole set of expert challenges. Like, the stuff that's on the board is such a simple set of parts, and yet it comes together to make an interesting puzzle. So, you know, we felt that it was worth the difficulty to have this as the first mission. Anyways, on to Square Wave. So here we are in the bar, which is where Suede was so early to get to. And Suede and Logan are sort of joking about what happened. They don't even have enough junkers left to haul away the carcasses. It's a good thing you were gentle when you shut down the factory, of course. I employed the utmost surgical precision when I violently demolished the place. Yeah, so about that. Back at the factory, you seemed a bit rusty with the swarm wielding interface. Oh yeah, says who? It says the built-in analysis software. So the idea here is that kind of, like, Suede as a protagonist needs to have something to overcome. And the thing he's overcoming is the fact that, like, you know, he lives in the past. His glory days were back during the war, and now he's kind of a washed-up, rusty old guy who's out in this desert outpost with nothing to do. You know, and he did his job, and he thinks it's fine, but his passion is missing. You know, he used to love training and practicing. Back when it mattered, the war is over. Being a swarm wielder feels pointless when there's no one to fight. And, you know, at this point you learn that there are tournaments. And he's like, oh, it used to take real skill to win them. Now it's just, you know, pointing and clicking or whatever it was. The simulations? Nah, screw them. Give me some real action. So we can see Suede's a little bit bitter. And he desires some real action. And, of course, be careful what you wish for. Here's Giselle. We used to have a joke here where Suede would joke like, oh, Giselle, you're violating the dress code. You need to wear pants when you come to the bar. And we cut the joke because it, like, people felt that it broke the mood. Like, there was joking at the start, and then there's Suede being moody, and then it transitions to this, like, uh-oh, there's a battle coming. And inserting another joke in there, it seemed to ruin the mood for people, and it didn't sit right. So that got cut, unfortunately. And what? Did we miss some of them? You look into it. I'm heading out there. I'm taking a swarm of drones this time. So now you get drones. And it, of course, reminds you to swipe. Before we get to this mission, let me talk a little bit about our philosophy in building the first 3 missions. We tried, like, we knew we had to teach attacking, defending, and buying things. And we tried every possible permutation and ordering of teaching those things. We tried where you had buying in the first mission and then also attacking in the first mission. We tried it where you had attacking and defending and then buying came later. And we settled upon the order of attacking and then buying and then defending after, like, years of making prototypes. We probably made, like, more than 100 versions of the first 3 missions. We used to have weekly meetings where we would present, you know, 1, 2, or 3 variations on what we had the week before and try to zero in on what the optimal way to teach people the game was, and it just took forever. It was really frustrating, and we would constantly be giving stuff to testers, and they would go, oh, I just, you know, I don't get it, or doesn't feel good. And it really wasn't until we had the campaign in there that it actually all came together. Because Prismata, like, the rules are not hard, But a lot of people want to sort of learn a game by doing it. And they have all these expectations about how the game works that turn out to be false because it's not a collectible card game. It's not StarCraft. And so we discovered we just needed more time to break down people's expectations and habituate them to the fact that Prismata works a little differently. And that's what led us to the current structure where we have a mission that's just attacking, and then a mission that's very simple purchasing and attacking with just a few things. And then finally in Mission 3 you get to defend, and in Mission 4 it all comes together. This infographic was sort of a late addition because we found that even though we just gave tips in-game that teach all of these things, people still weren't getting it. And we wanted to remind them in sort of a more visual form about, like, you know, what happens, how the game actually works. And once we added that, all the problems about people not understanding seemed to more or less go away. And here's Logan, who's introducing us these little in-game chats, which we call Logan tips, because more or less it's just Logan. The other kind where Giselle is pointing to something we call Giselle tips. So here's our first Logan tip. I installed this nice chat app on your slate. What do you think? I don't give a damn. So that's sort of what Suede thinks of these. And now we could just take it for granted that Suede and Logan are talking on our screen over here. Yeah, and so we get a little bit of plot advancement and sometimes also tips on how to play. We can buy our first Drake. The vast majority of players at this point are still playing 100% with the mouse. We used to not have this tip, and people were so confused about why their blast forges were going away. They didn't realize their blast forges were going away and that they had to buy more, and they just couldn't understand why they had to keep buying more blast forges. So we added that tip after many play sessions without it. So then we get a little more plot advancement. Oh, there's something going on. If it's more junkers, tell someone to tip them over. They're not even fighting back. This actually used to say something very different, and we changed it to this because people they had this complaint I don't get it. Why aren't I being attacked yet? And we needed to at least make the characters acknowledge that was in fact expected and what was happening. And we tried all kinds of different ways. We had this idea that maybe Logan had hacked into them and had turned them off so that they stopped moving, and we tried so many different things. And in the end, the answer was just have Suede say they're not even fighting back, and that was it. That was what it took to make people okay with the fact that it's just a boring tutorial where they're fighting enemies that aren't doing much. And we were worried that people would quit sort of in Mission 2 and start going to combat training or I mean, combat training is not even unlocked yet. Just start playing versus mode. But we really want them to stick with it, and sort of adding these sort of little pulls to get people to just stay in for a bit longer until they get to the good stuff was very important. Anyways. Hey Arkanisha, how you doing? So when I'm done this mission, I'm going to do the expert version of it, and then I'm going to host you. So, we'll get to that. So now we understand the threat. There are drones that are building things, and they can construct nearly anything. And we learn a little bit about the universe. They use all this advanced AI. Oh, did it decide to optimize urban cleanliness by chasing out all the humans? Now, it seems unlikely, because they have AI safety laws. Well then, what went wrong? Well, the Alliance's dogs will be here in no time if these drones start building stuff that knows how to shoot. So we want to just put in these little tidbits about the universe, but to try and keep it relatively brief. And now finally we get to build drones. So we can start building up our economy. And let me just hide my face for a moment again so you can see the objectives. We added this optional objective because some of the strong players were really starting to get a bit bored and not really understanding that it was a puzzle game or that it was a strategy game, because they kind of felt like, oh, I'm just going through the motions, I can't lose, it's just a tutorial. So we decided to add this optional objective to make people understand, aha, there is something that I can optimize. I can try and win fast, and that's actually an interesting problem. And we don't have the undo arrows here, and we don't have the ability to unclick units, because it's still too early for that. We had so many people who'd like, they'd buy a Steel Splitter and then click it. And it would just disappear. And even though we added the little pop-up that says canceled, it wasn't enough. People would click it, and then they would like, oh, buy it again, and then click it again, and buy it again, click it again. We really need to disable undo for a while so that people can get this message when they click a Steel Splitter. It's so important. But then the problem came up that people were like, well, I want to undo, I want to go back. And so we decided that we would just have that Giselle tip that teaches you Control-Z, that teaches you that you can step backwards by using Control-Z. And that solved the problem of people not being able to undo. And it actually has kind of modified the behavior of new players, because new players, they're often using Control-Z more than I would say most of our current player base uses it, which is an interesting effect. Anyways, winning by turn 17 isn't too difficult if you buy lots of drakes. That's kind of the number one thing you need to do. I don't know whether I want a drone here or what. I definitely want to click the drake here because oh, did I not? I thought I was supposed to prevent one from dying. I can't even remember how to do it. We'll see whether I managed to do it or not. Logan's asking you to grab a logic trip from one of the dead drones. That used to be a longer conversation. It was cut down. Maybe I can do this and just save some granularity. You do get undo in the breaches, because we found that like people actually really wanted to do this and it didn't confuse anybody. So we enabled undo here. We just didn't enable unbuying. So let's see. Now we can do this. Are we gonna get it by turn 17? It's gonna be close. We're short, aren't we? Damn. Too bad. So we failed the optional objective, but it's okay. Like, our goal was actually that the vast majority of players would fail it. Because we don't actually want players to sort of go back and try again and stuff like that. We want players to get through it and move on. But we do want to illustrate that, like, the game can be challenging and can have hard challenges. And it's just sort of to illustrate the potential of that existing is what is key. Anyway, so we get a little cutscene afterwards. It was a close one. They're just going to say, meet me back at the HQ. You get this joke about a couple more Steel Splitters and we would have gone over budget again. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have blown all our money on Giselle's upgrades. So this is very important. We really want to give streamers an opportunity to make like crude jokes. Like, we're not explicitly saying like Giselle's a sex robot or something like that, but the streamers will often make that joke here, and it really helps them entertain their audience if they can, like, if the script feeds them ways of being funny, it's much more enjoyable for them. So I think in the future, we're actually going to do a lot more of that. We're going to, like, you know, provide ways for streamers and content creators to, like, add value to what we've already put in the script. Anyways, Giselle turned out to be pretty useful today. She come back to the office. It's your turn to file all the reports this week. Oh yeah, this was also a very late line change that we only did a couple of weeks before we released. It used to have some boring ending, but no, Suede has to file all the reports. Can't really complain after getting to blow up this much stuff in a day. Anyways, let's do a quick playthrough of the expert challenge. I'm not even sure if I remember how to do it. Anyway, so this setup, it is entirely different than the one in the mission. And I think it's a bit more challenging. Quite a bit more challenging. Bet 100 top. You guys have very little faith in my ability to succeed at my own mission. I did design both of these expert challenges. It's turn 5. I need to finish by turn 8. I think I want to buy another Drake next turn. And also click a Blast Forge. That looks good, right? Okay, we got her. We got her. Okay. Section 1 is not too bad. Section 2, so here's the thing about Section 2. People have said, like, oh, you should have made it harder, or I can win with, like, 2 extra damage to spare. And we know that. We didn't make the hardest possible version of the mission. We could have added 2 more litter bugs. The thing is, in these types of challenging missions, like, say you have to go Drone Blast Forge to win, or you have to go Drone and do a 2 Blast Forge strat to win. People find it very frustrating if they, like, play the wrong first move or first 2 or 3 moves, and then they're literally in an unwinnable state. It frustrates people a lot. So we tried to adjust the difficulty of this mission so that a variety of openings can still win. You know, you can go 2 Blast Forge, you can go 3 Blast Forge, you can rush a bit faster or slower, and they all barely get there. And so we do introduce this notion of you can mouse over your opponent's face to get their supplies. Which is sort of useful because you can sort of see how they're purchasing dumpster bots and scrappers. The ratio of their prices to their HP is such that, like, you actually want them buying scrappers instead of dumpster bots, but only by, like, the tiniest little hair. But because they have 12 drones and they're buying a dumpster bot every turn, it's pretty important to, like, get them off that 12 quickly. So I think one of the ways you can proceed is you get the second Blast Forge and you just start getting Dregs. And you want to take out their drones as fast as possible. That tip only happens in 1-2 Expert. I think it also happens in one of the Chapter 2 missions, which is not out yet, which I will not be discussing at all today. Yeah, so I think we do that. We don't need to click one of these yet. Let's see. So it ends on turn 19. At some point a bit before then, we want to start to, like, just buy Blast Forges and not buy Drakes anymore, because at some point the Blast Forges become better value than the Drakes. Like, say it's turn 16. If we buy a Steel Splitter, it will attack on 3 subsequent turns, so it's probably good value. But if we buy a Blast Forge, it will do 2 damage. So the question is, which of those is a better investment? We can do a 7-4-1. And what do we have here? 10. Ooh, this might be... We might have screwed up our granularity. Yeah, because now we can't do full damage. Oh, we can? Oh, maybe we're fine then. Okay. Yeah. So this is the solution that gets it exactly, but you can do better than this. And there are many solutions to this, in fact. And yes, you can hold control to see your opponent's units as well. And now we get, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite little facts. So we added these little facts to the ends of most of the missions in the game. If you deal 17 damage to a pile of scrappers and dumpster bots, you'll be forced to waste some attack, and 17 is the largest such number. For example, if you have 18, you can kill 2 dumpster bots and a scrapper. If you have 19, you can kill 3 scrappers and a dumpster bot. If you have 20, you could kill 5 scrappers. If you have 21, 3 dumpster bots, and so on. 17 is the largest that you can't kill. And so, fun little math exercise. In general, for 2 enemies with whatever HP, what's the largest number that you can't damage them? It's a fun little math exercise that I think I learned in high school. I think it was originally phrased as like Chicken McNuggets. You can buy like 3 packs, no, what is it, 6 packs, 9 packs, and 20 packs. What's the largest number of McNuggets that you can't buy? And it's like 43 or something like that. Yeah, there are tips on the victory screen that are unique to each mission. I mean, finding the answer is basic arithmetic, but proving that that's the final answer and the optimal answer is not so basic. Like, the proof is, it's elementary, but it's not, you know, it's a little bit tricky. Anyways, that's all I'm doing today.